So, welcome everyone. Really excited about this webinar. It's inspired by a meetup that I attended, I think last month, or a couple of weeks ago. It was a meetup organized by Olaf Steltler from Mercedes, and it was at the Code-Centric in Stuttgart. And he said something really interesting in the very, very beginning of the meetup. And I'm not going to share it yet. I'm going to keep it until last. But I'll tell the story to get to that answer, to what he said. But as after he opened the meetup, he had there were Daniel and Miriam from Code-Centric that did a presentation where they explained how they saw that the developer portal space was like differentiating in like these four solutions: the API registry, developer portal, catalog, and marketplace. And that was really interesting. And I really liked the split up because it was like different personas for different parts. But there was something something that doesn't really completely fit. So I was thinking a lot further about it, and that's when I decided to do this webinar. And I think basically what I want to talk about is about three possible problems that we're trying to address here. First one is the naming problem. What should you call your developer portal? And is this really a naming problem that we're talking about here, or is it something else? I think the people from Code-Centric, the presenters, they were looking at it as a tool selection problem. But I'll talk a bit more about that, why I think that's not the case. Or I think the third way to look at it is to look at it as a value creation and a differentiation problem. And this is my preferred scenario. And then, but I'll explain you why. A very short introduction about Pronovix. So we're a company that specializes in developer portals. That's all we do. It's for 10 years now that we've been specializing in developer portals, a little bit over 13 years in documentation portals built on top of CMSs. And we build portals that can evolve with a business. We organize a bunch of things. I think, Rebecca, if you can share the link to AI the Docs that's coming up, which is a conference we do. I've been seeing the agenda coming together. Laura's been working on that, and it's really exciting, I think. So definitely worth to have a look at that. But we also run the Devportal Awards, and I got a bunch of content about developer portals on our blog and in a bunch of different places. For 10 years, we've been an Apigee partner. That became a Google partnership when Apigee got acquired. And then last week, we had a really big announcement because we also became a Microsoft partner. And our goal is to be able to provide the ability to create portals adjusted to specific business requirements to both Google and Microsoft customers, and also other customers, of course. But with partnerships that really enable those those types of solutions and those community solutions going forward. This is a new thing that we've been working on, kind of like thinking about. So it's kind of like a buyer's guide for developer portals. And it's a bit self-serving, but indulge me. And so the way currently we explain how we think about the market is that as a product owner, like an API product owner or program owner, you've got like a couple of questions to ask yourself. So first is, are APIs and digital interfaces part of your company's differentiation strategy? Or are you working in a really large organization that has a complex company structure, or has like certain processes that you can't easily change? If that is not the case, so if you can work in a smaller team, or you don't really need to think about differentiation for your business using APIs, then normally an out-of-the-box API management solutions developer portal or a SaaS solution will be enough to help you to address the needs that you have. On the other hand, if that is not the case, then, and you don't want to hire your own team. So like if, because we've seen that successful developer portal teams, there's small ones that are successful, but I've seen teams that are not all that successful of even 5 people. So like to have a really successful team, you need to hire really good people, some people here on the call, that like Ungentle, for example, that really know how to build a really good team and how to build a great developer portal. And then you need like different roles. You need a product owner, a designer, technical writers, possibly an architect, front-end developer, back-end developer, a couple of more technical writers, and that's quite involved. And if you don't have the budget for 6 to 12 people, at least to start, then you could maybe work with us. And then we provide the benefits of SaaS, but with the ability to be in control of your roadmap, so that you can work with us on an open source developer portal that you can bring in-house. So you can have things like data residency, if you need to be in a specific locality with your data, like your customer data, or if you even have to be on-prem. All of these things are possible with us, and we can facilitate that. A more visual way of thinking about it is that if you want to be on the roadmap bus, where there's a product owner from a SaaS, like a Devportal SaaS solution, then Devportal SaaS solution can be good. If you want to be fully in control and yourself at the wheel, then you can set up your own team. And then if you want something in between, where you can work with knowledgeable people that can get you to your destination quick, without having to own your own car and knowing how to drive yourself. It's probably good if you know a little bit, but then you can work with us with Pronovix. Practically, this helps because we often see teams come to us and say, this is how they normally imagine their journey. Is like, we're going to start working on developer experience, make that really good, and then afterwards we'll start automating, and then who knows, maybe someday we'll also work on value. But we've seen that doesn't work. That this is conceptually flawed, because if you don't think about the value first, if you don't think about bright spots, executives might lose interest in the program, might start defunding, and then things get hairy. So what we normally recommend is to first start with bright spots. Look for how is your portal going to help to differentiate your business. How does it really make an impact? What's the story you're going to tell to your investors in your investment brochure about your developer portal at the end of the year? And then also, of course, work on developer experience and operational improvements to automate things, but then keep your eyes on strategic value in the long term and keep moving towards strategic value, because that's how you build a team and you build an API program that is not going to get defunded or lose interest, or that the executives will not lose interest into. Okay, so enough about Pronovix. Let's talk a little bit about the history of developer portals, speciation, because I'm a bioengineer and I love bringing in some natural stories into this story. Well, I'll have one picture just to indulge myself a little bit later. But when we got started 10 years ago, everything was about external developer portals, because API programs, like CTOs, CIOs, they were reading all this cool stuff about the digital natives, the API natives that were building API products and that were building really booming businesses on top of that. And this whole idea of developers as a prime market got started from that, where the rush was on to be the company that had a really amazing developer experience for market X, so that then developers could build applications on top of those APIs that you're providing, and that you could create an additional position in the market. Now, the reality of that was that for most organizations, actually that didn't make all that much sense, because very few organizations should be trying to directly sell to developers. This business model of paper API call is really very limited in its applicability. For most organizations, that doesn't make any sense at all. We've seen organizations like ABN AMRO, like actually I have a podcast episode about this with Koen Adolfs, where he talks about how they have a different business model for every single API that they have in their developer portal. But I don't think that any of those are actually paper API call. There's always a business model. Like one is compliance, making sure you don't get a fine. Another one is like payment volume that they get some sort of deal on. And there's a clear idea about how they're making money, but it's not necessarily this classical paper API call model. And then after like I don't know exactly when it started, but 5 years, it's definitely already multiple years ago, we started seeing this bifurcation of the space where there's a whole lot of excitement about internal developer portals, and I was kind of surfing on the wave of platforms, software platforms that are being worked out inside of large organizations to try to reduce the development costs inside of an organization. So the idea was to create reusable assets, create one way of doing things, maybe creating golden pods and stuff like that, so that throughout the whole large organization, developers would be working in a similar way, being able to take advantage of each other's work and like reduce the development cost, make sure that things were not getting duplicated and stuff like that. There was this split between internal portals and external portals, and then I've got a blog post up. I didn't check when, but I think quite a while ago where I talked about this split. Like there's now internal and external portals, and these are very different things. And I did a presentation in Paris about this, and for a while that was it was clear. There's like two separate things. I was recommending customers, you should have two portals, one for the inside, one for the outside. But then there started getting some weird signals. Some customers that were like, actually no, we want one portal, we want both in one, because like we've got very good reasons, like we're structured in this way and this is the way that it makes sense for us. Or so that started changing. And then a little while later, our partner Apigee at the time, they came out with API Hub, which was this API registry, and it was also like, what is this thing and how does it all fit together? And I've seen like Apigee has one of these, API Hub, Microsoft has API Center, that are really meant as a registry more than really developer portal. And how do these two relate to each other? But this is kind of the evolution that I've been seeing. So first external, then internal platform portals, now registries potentially. And I want to take a little bit a step back because I want to look at some of the different types of portals that I've heard people talk about and the different personas that they're addressing. And to ask this question, like, what kind of portal is it that you actually need? And here's my biology slide. So the Darwin finches, I don't know if you noticed, but you probably know the story from biology. But there's this story about how there was very little birds that started evolving into different species that were specialized in very different things. And it was genetically, they were not that diverse, but through adaptation, they were adjusted to very specific circumstances so that they could actually fulfill very different functions. And so I'm going to go through I think it's 8 different types of portals that I've heard people talk about and that I've seen in the market. First one is the developer portal. Yes. So first one is developer portal, and sometimes called an API consumer portal. This is the portal that all started with. It's about self-service, developer experience. time to first hello world. Like how can you make it as smooth and as easy as possible to get started with an API? There might be frequently asked questions, tickets, and so on and so on. So it's really about discovery and making it easy to get started consuming APIs for external developers, typically. So that's you try to lower the hurdles so that more developers would be choosing your product. Next one is API catalogues. API catalogues, in contrast with developer portals, are really purely focused. This is also what CodeCentric was mentioning. They're really purely focused on just listing everything out. Make a central API index that serves for findability and searchability. Because these are two really important concepts in the space, is making sure that all your interfaces can be discovered in a central location so that people will not start re-implementing something that somebody else has already done. Next one is API registry. I was talking about that a little while ago already. I've heard other names like API referential. I think especially in the French market, that's how people call it, API repository. This one is really focused on governance, and this is often like a combination of the security team in an organization and the API program owners that are trying to make sure that governance rules are being followed and that your API program is safe and that there's no wild assets floating around that that are maybe not secured. Key here is creating a central single source of truth for all your APIs. Typically, this is more internal facing because like on the inside, a lot of organizations are fine with just exposing the existence of an API, at least, to all of their employees. Some organizations don't, like especially in high security environments. It doesn't mean that you have to give access to the APIs, but at least the visibility of the existence of an API, and then connect that with API lifecycles and making sure that you're going through the motions to make sure that you get safe and secure APIs. Platform portals, already talked a little bit about that. As I said, this is highly tied to the DevOps community and the Kubernetes crowds. Backstage is a very popular open source developer portal in this space. That is really about helping the developers to help themselves, and often connected with inner sourcing initiatives where in a really large organization, developers just start playing with this, and it's built in TypeScript, and you can develop it further. There's other platform portals than this one, of course, but that's kind of like the archetypical type of portal. Often key concepts here are shift left and shift down. So like how can you reduce the burden of governance, make sure that things are secure, improve all of these things by making it part of the platform so that people don't have to think about it and implement it on their own. It's about key here is improving the internal developer experience, and because of that, improving your productivity. Also creating consistency so that it's easier for someone who comes into your organization to learn once how they're supposed to work inside of your organization, and then have the ability to work efficiently and effectively. Gartner came out with some numbers that if you have a really good platform portal, I think it was like 44% improvement in productivity or something like that, like self-reported. Very interesting stuff. API producer portals. These are portals that are about making it easier for someone who's creating APIs to get them submitted into both code repos, potentially code repository, API management, posted to developer portal or the API registry. So it's kind of like an interface that creates a workflow that facilitates this process of creating interface assets. And again, governance and lifecycle are connected to this often because they're basically I think you could call it shift down probably, or shift left, so that the individual developers don't necessarily need to be thinking about this, but it's part of this process. Like if you want to get an API into API management, you need to use this portal, and then a lot of this stuff is being taken care of for you. Then there's API marketplaces. I always feel, I've told this, maybe you've heard this, me telling this story before, but I don't like the word marketplace because it sets a certain expectation, especially with senior executives, that like it sets two expectations. And I think both of them are dangerous potentially. So one is that this is a marketplace, and we can be the owner of the marketplace, and we can like take a cut on all the traffic that is going to happen here. And because everybody loves this space, there's going to be so much business that this is going to be fantastic. Very few succeed in that, and there were a couple of startups that were trying to do this publicly, and that have already like stopped those actions, or that have evolved or been acquired. But also marketplaces sometimes can be started on the inside or on the outside in a large organization, and yeah, again, so there's this idea of we're going to make a lot of money. The other thing is that it feels a lot like this flat marketplace philosophy of an Amazon, which is a great tool for creating like a transactional marketplace where you can find the product and then you can buy it very easily. But it's not a great tool necessarily for discoverability or for learning about the different products that you have. So that's why, personally, I don't like the word marketplace, but that's what people call it. So that's what I will call it. The key here is this ability to have a multi-provider space catalog where potentially multiple companies are publishing their APIs in one place. There could be also multiple departments inside of a large organization. It's about productization, like helping these departments to productize their APIs, monetization or transfer costs, so like that you have one part of the organization that can charge another. Like recently with AI, this got a lot more relevance again because AI compute can be expensive, even though prices are going down, but it can be quite expensive, and being able to charge the right department for these costs for heavy use it can be very important, and things like this. So it's driving API reuse and API consumption inside of an ecosystem. Integration hubs, this is already an interesting one because it starts going beyond the brief of purely the API domain. We've got a customer that started with a developer portal. It was pure REST APIs first. Then they added async APIs, and now they're adding integration workflows. And so there's this transition from purely API domain to all the interfaces domain. Like if you're working in that organization and you're looking for a certain information asset, you should be able to find it in this portal, like for building an integration. And that's here. So the focus is about creating a holistic connectivity. So it's not just about this one REST API domain or the async API domain, like all these separate domains, which is kind of a mess. Like one other customer told me, like, yeah, we have. They have 8 solutions that they're working with, and they want to bring them all into one place so that people don't have to be thinking like, okay, what would be the right tool for this information? Probably this is an SAP, or maybe they've already made an API for this, or maybe this is like a data. So that kind of question where you have to like think about what technology you want to use to approach a domain, that's really not a very good way of doing things. It's better that you have the ability to say like, okay, this is the information or this is the capability that I'm looking for. what you have. What are the things that have already been built in the past that I can also go and reuse, maybe some quality metrics or stuff like that. And then the last one is solution portals. This is probably the least mature one, but I've started seeing some signals of this in two ways. First signal that I saw was on Adyen's developer portal. They have on their payment, I think it's a point of sales API, where you have your API documentation, and then there's a call out for their payment device, like where you could, a point of sale payment device, documented side by side. So if you are looking at this API, you might actually rather want to buy the solution, which solves you the trouble of building your own integration. The other thing that I started seeing in the community is portals that start like when you land on the first page, instead of just having like onboarding and go here to our catalog, they say like, okay, what kind of solution are you interested in? And it could be split by industry. It could be split by a certain solution set, or a certain thing that or a certain affordance that you're trying to get. If you have a system of records about employee data, maybe you have a payment solution. You have a insurance solution or a pension solution, or things like that, where you're thinking with the head of the customer about what is the kind of thing that they're looking for. And the cool thing is that here you're taking these APIs and you're turning them into the heart or the backbone for supporting your business differentiation, for telling your story about what is it that your company does and how can it create value for your customers through a combination of digital interfaces, maybe physical products, maybe actually services. It's more like a use case driven UI that helps people to find out like what can they do with you. I think this is going to become incredibly important going forward, especially with more and more as AI is able to do more automated connections and is making it possible for business developers to do self-service things. Then this is going to be super important. Also for AI-enabled search to find your product rather than your competitor's product. I think this way of doing things, looking at it from a solution use case affordance perspective, I think is going to become more and more important. So those were the portal types. And yeah, as you see, there's already quite a few things. I don't know about you, maybe or after the question round, but like, do you also agree with me that each of these have their place, and that, well, maybe sometimes you might have slightly different perspectives still for a specific organization, and that there are certain solution categories that are evolving, but this is not done and it's still evolving. So question, and here's some more AI generated memes. I'm sorry, I've been having some fun, but do you need one of each of these, or do you need only one, or do you need only two, or do you need something completely different? We have seen, as I've been hinting at, like, we've seen customers say, actually, we want a mixed portal. We only want one, and we want to combine some of these capabilities into one. Now, do you want to create one portal that can do all of these things? No, I think that's a really terrible idea, because then it's just going to become so heavy with so many different things that I don't think that makes sense. But like, being able to pick and choose what capabilities you want to mix into the interface for your interfaces, I think that is what I see as the future for the space. There is two big trends. There's this developer portals as the interface for your automation infrastructure on the inside, Um, and developer portals, or whatever you call it later, because maybe these are no longer developer portals, and in this case, it's probably an automation portal, and on the outside, it's a solution portal, where like when you start thinking about AI helping people to choose products or to buy products, this is going to become more and more important. Also on the inside. So this is kind of like a general trend, but then there's different needs that you might have in your organization that you can address with different aspects. So yeah, and just like animals have, this is how I think about this. There's one, I think that's the last biology slide. Maybe there's more. Well, anyway, I really like this one because it's so expressive. But these animals all have very, very different faces. Their faces are the interface through which they interact with the world, or most of the interaction happens with the world. Um, uh, like the one on the left, these hairs is like, I think, to catch insects. An owl, you know what owls do. A zebra and a rhinoceros, they have very differentiated ecological niches that they're playing inside of the ecosystems that they participate in. So I think similarly, developer portals can address differentiated needs to help your company to be unique in the space. Now, besides this, there's also this whole AI thing, and how AI is changing the interface landscape. And some of you that have seen talks, thumbs up or thumbs down, have you heard about Wardley mapping? It's really hard to escape a presentation from you without getting at least one Wardley map. so I think so Wardley mapping. I think I don't need to introduce explain it this time. That's great. So, but if you're not, for those that did not dare to put up the thumbs up or the thumbs down, Wardley mapping is a way to kind of predict how tool chains will evolve over time by mapping the value chain against the Wardley. Yeah. Will Rebecca, can you add a link? So yeah, thank you. So it shows how a technology evolves from initial inception through custom build to product through its until it becomes actually a commodity or a utility. And this is the industrial process, right? You see this all over the place. Simon Wardley used this map, well, not this one, but used mapping to predict cloud computing before Amazon came out. So it's a really huge deal. And what it shows you is how components like evolve to become more industrialized and commoditized, and how as you go up in the value chain, as you get closer to the customer, you might need a more differentiated solution, or at least this is how I interpret it. Now, APIs, for a very long time, we've been talking about APIs as products, and and APIs as products, that's much better than APIs as projects. But like a couple of years ago, when I started learning about Wardley maps, I was like, why? Where are the utilities? Where's APIs as utilities? Why don't we have that? And started asking people this question, and sometimes reactions was actually very, very strong because if you're an API product owner, you don't necessarily want your API to become a commodity because there's a lot of negative connotations around that. Now, there are some commodities where the organizations that built them make a lot of money. So it's not necessarily that a commodity needs to be undifferentiated, but there's this feeling around it. Now, I've been talking about this for a while. I've had several podcast episodes where I've been asking this question, like, so, when are we going to see utility for APIs? I think I'd actually arrived. If you've thumbs up, thumbs down, have you heard of MCP, Model Context Protocol? Yeah. Okay, nobody dares anymore. Or maybe you haven't heard of it. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is a bit more mixed. So MCP is like, if you're anyhow following AI stuff, especially on LinkedIn, it's been a barrage of notifications and messages about model context protocol, because Anthropic started with this, and it's kind of like the way to explain it, or the way I understand it, is it's like it's kind of like an API protocol for large language models, but in being a way for large language models to connect to other solutions, like to connect to tools like APIs, to connect to data, like a database, or to connect to another large language model. In that, it actually becomes kind of like a utility for APIs, because you don't, like when you're doing traditional development, you're creating an app and you're doing like a point-to-point integration of an API product. But every API product needs to be integrated, like, you have to build the application normally. With MCP, at least the promise is that the LLM can help you to interact with those tools, and to even choose the tool that you need for a specific purpose. Very, very exciting stuff. It is really, really, really hot. There's Microsoft has announced it. OpenAI has announced it, that they're supporting it. There's a whole bunch of tools out there. Very exciting space to follow, and quite a lot of interesting things will happen here, I think. So this is like the how will AI do things here, and that's why I and also because of the things I mentioned earlier, I start to look at developer portal capabilities, like the things that developer portals do, as composable assets for building other stuff. What do I mean with that? So when and this is more of this commodity and product thinking, but right now in the SaaS world, we have been trained to be looking for a self-contained solution that's like purpose-built for one specific purpose. And that's why there's now, I think, 50, I haven't counted it yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's 100 Devportal SaaS already out there. We had one customer, and they evaluated, I think, 27 solutions that chose us, or they in the end said that we were the winners of the RFI. But there's just a whole lot of diversity out there. But most of these are focused on building a very specific product that is highly differentiated and specifically addressing specific market niche. But there's other types of commodities. In the manufacturing world, we also have semi-finished goods that are also commodities, like screws or electric engines, or these, I don't know how you call them, switches, electricity switches. I hope everybody recognizes these. This is what we have in Europe. Fuses. Thank you, Laura. These semi-finished products are composable components that you can use to build a solution that's right for you. Like very few houses, normally houses are unique. There's some exceptions. Sometimes you have a developer that builds a whole lot of houses that are very similar, especially in Europe, especially in Belgium. Houses are very unique. And what's happening is that we're using these composable products to build a specific experience that is right for the owner of the house, or for the electricity network that you need inside of your house. So I'm sure that nobody has a closet like this, like a distribution board like this in your house, but probably you have like something smaller, at least one of these, if not a couple of them, in different locations of your house, that are helping you to break the circuit. And what it allows for is that you can take an electric device and just plug it in the network. You can buy it online and just plug it in the network. If it's not secure, if there's something wrong with it, the fuse will jump, and it will break the electricity network and prevent harm. So I think something similar is what will be necessary in the API space post AI, and I think this is the kind of tools that we will be building for different purposes, where maybe there's a central distribution board where APIs enter your organization. Then there's different boards for different other sets of the organization, but they're all interconnected, and they help to route API traffic throughout the organization. How we are executing on this as Pronovix. So we believe that post-AI SaaS is sovereign, kind of like IKEA SaaS. So sovereign SaaS, meaning that, especially in today's political climate, being able to bring your data into your own country can be very important. And like with SaaS, that's not always that straightforward. And also the ability to use these components, potentially using AI to compose the components, can help you to create a solution that's right for your organization. I forgot this picture. I've got this picture of a closet I made with IKEA products that like specifically, well, it's for next presentation. But yeah, it allows you to still have ready-made things that accelerate the building, but then you can still weave your own story with them. And I think that's really valuable. We have this Devportal Value Compass that we worked on with 3 components: business alignment, operational excellence, and developer experience, to help customers to keep thinking about all of the value, not just about one of these 2. And then we also worked recently, we developed a maturity model for developer experience that we can use to help like advise customers on how to evolve their portal. And we have this extension catalog. This is how we're executing on it, so that you can have different extensions that you can add to your portal. And then search some extensions like a 3-column layout, like, catalog obviously is a classic. It has to be there. Search, like in searching inside of OpenAPI spec, and configurable access request flows. And this one I will let play, where you can select products and like create information like questionnaires for specific products, so that you can collect the information you need to be able to approve access to an asset. And this is also what we use to connect to different API management solutions like Microsoft and Google, so that we can route requests from one portal to different systems. Could even be to ServiceNow or something else. Okay. And yeah, and there's like a form builder that we use for this. Now, that was the question about, is this a story about differentiation and creating something for creating value for your organization? I want to come back to that first question. But what should you call your developer portal? Because that's also a really important one. And there's one more meme, so what Olaf Stelzner said was that you should not call your developer portal a developer portal. So he said, and that was the wow. Okay, this is really good actually. So if you think about your developer portal, or whatever you call this thing, that you think about it as a product in its own right, and then it can evolve and it can become something else. And Olaf said, I don't remember his exact words, but he had this idea like, don't call it developer portal or one of these other things. Call it like one of our customers, Verifone, calls it verifone.cloud. And then it can be both the developer portal and the documentation portal and other things that it can evolve into. And I think that's probably, the other last piece of advice that I wanted to share with all of you, or the last insight that I thought was really, really cool. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions.